Hey everybody, welcome to Board Online, Board Offline. Today we're bringing you a how to play video of Maquis. This is a solo only game about the French Resistance. Small footprint on the table. This is one that you could take with you, and if you were, on a trip and you want to set up in a hotel room, just right there with whatever little tables they happen to have in the hotel room, you could fit that right there. Too big for like a airplane tray, but the seat tray or whatever, unless you're flying first class. But it definitely has a small footprint. So we're going to teach you how to play this. We're also going to be bringing you in a gameplay of this as well, so be sure to check that out in the future. So we're going to get right down to the table. I'm going to teach you how to play Maquis. To set up the game, first place the board in the play area along with the morale and soldiers board. Shuffle the 10 patrol cards to form a face-down deck. This is known as the patrol deck. Place the white tracking cube in the start space there, the red tracking cube in the start space there, and the blue tracking cube in this start space here. Place all the resource tokens here to form the supply. Place the spare room action tokens face up near the board. You may examine these tokens at any time. Place 3 of the resistance worker pawns in the safe house location. These are the player's initial pool of workers. Place the 2 remaining resistance workers near the cafe just off the board. These may be recruited later. Randomly select 2 missions for this game. However, initially it's recommended that the Officer's Mansion and the Milice Day Parade are used. All unused missions are returned to the box. The selected mission cards will impact how easy or difficult the game is. The more difficult the mission is, the more stars it is rated. So for instance, 1 star, such as sabotage, will be easy. 2 stars, such as coded messages, will be harder. And 3 stars on these large cards, such as bomb the barracks, will be even harder. Page 3 of the rulebook gives a good rundown of how to find the appropriate balance of difficulty based on the missions the player selects. Set all other pawns, the blue and the red, near the board. Also, keep this reference card nearby for use. Each round of the game is considered 1 day. Each day is comprised of 3 phases: the placement phase, the action phase, and the upkeep phase. During the placement phase, players will first check the morale track to determine how many patrol pawns will be placed that day. Each space on the morale track has a black number indicating the morale of the town and a red number, which shows the minimum number of patrols that will be deployed that day. The number of patrols to be deployed is equal to the number of recruited available resistance workers or that red number, whichever is higher. So currently, on the start spot, the red number is 3, and we have 3 available resistance workers, so 3 is the number of patrols that will be deployed. If, on the other hand, morale was down here at 4, and you can see the number of patrols associated with 4 morale is 4 patrols, then even though we only have 3 resistance workers, 4 patrols would be deployed since the 4 here is the higher number. If a worker is left out on a location for multiple days due to the mission card rules, that still counts towards the player's total available workers. After morale is checked, resistance workers and patrols will begin being placed, starting with resistance workers. There may only be 1 pawn of any type per location. In other words, a resistance worker and a patrol may not be in the same location at the same time. It's also possible that there may be points during the game when the number of available resistance workers will be less than the number of patrols being placed. In that case, place them back and forth as usual, but once resistance workers run out, place all remaining patrol 1 at a time. So how do you go about placing resistance workers and patrols? To place resistance workers, choose a location on the board and place 1 of your available workers from a safe house. So maybe here. You may place this worker on any available location regardless of whether you can trace a route from there to a safe house. We'll discuss finding that safe route later. To then place a patrol, first draw a card. This patrol card lists 3 locations on the board where a patrol pawn can be placed: the fence, the Pont du Nord, and the Pont l'Evêque. If the first location does not contain a resistance worker or a previously placed patrol, then that is where the patrol will go for the day. So the fence, right here. However, if that first location was already occupied, then the patrol will go to the second location. If that one had been occupied, then it would have used the third. If all 3 locations are occupied, as you see here, the patrol attempts an arrest instead of patrolling. To attempt an arrest, go back to the top of the patrol card and check again, but this time they are looking for resistance workers in these locations. As soon as they find one, so at the fence, that worker is arrested and removed from the game permanently. If all 3 locations had been occupied by other patrols, as you see here, then that patrol simply is not placed. Whatever the case, once that card is resolved, it is discarded face up in the discard pile. The player may look through the discard pile at any time. If when the player goes to draw from the deck it's empty, they will shuffle the discard pile and place it face down to form a new deck. At the beginning of the game, all patrols placed are Milice patrols. If the soldier track ever advances, the player will begin placing soldiers. Soldiers replace Milice patrols on a 1-to-1 basis. So for instance, if morale was here where 3 patrols are being placed, and there's 3 workers, so we know that only 3 patrols will be placed this time, but the soldier track was here on 1, then 1 soldier and 2 Milice patrols will be placed. It's important to realize that soldiers are always the last patrols to be placed. Once all resistance and patrol pawns are placed, move to the action phase. In the action phase, you will, in any order you wish, activate each of your resistance workers one at a time. Workers may only be activated once per day and for at most 1 action each. Resources acquired during a day may be used later in that same day to pay for another action. You are not obligated to perform an action just because you have a worker in that location. It's also important to realize that resource tokens are limited by the number provided in the game. Many locations have actions, and if a worker occupies a location with an action, they may perform that action. In some locations, such as the doctor, the player may spend their action to gain the resource shown in the top right corner. In this case, this action would gain us the medicine. An arrow indicates the player must trade the indicated resource to obtain the indicated reward. In this case, the player must spend 2 money in order to gain a spare room, which we'll discuss a little more shortly. Anytime resources are spent, they are returned to the supply. A slash, as you see here, means the player has a choice between the 2 options. They may only perform one of them. The airdrop icon means the player may choose either 1 weapon, 1 money, or 3 food resources to be placed on one of the field locations found here and here. The player may only place resources in a field that does not already have resources in it. And a resistance worker may not be placed in a field that is currently empty. However, if a field does have airdropped items in it, during the placement phase, the player may place their worker there to collect those resources. So let's go back to the spare room locations. There are 3 of them on the board. When the player activates one of the spare rooms, they choose one of the spare rooms shown here and replace the current action with the new one from the new spare room. This is permanent. The safe house spare room acts as a second safe house that workers may return to at the end of the day. This is important since if a resistance worker cannot trace a route back to the safe house, either this one or this one, there will be negative consequences. The fixer spare room allows the player to perform an action on any spare room that is not presently on the board. In other words, any spare room in this stack here. The player must pay the usual cost plus the money resource indicated here. If the mission card has an action rectangle on it, as you see here or here, it is considered to be a location connected to the town through the exit below it. A worker must be placed here to take the mission action, just like any other location. When the player has scored a success on that mission, they place a marker in the rectangle. If it is a mission card with multiple rectangles and they're numbered, as you see here 1 and 2, then the player must complete 1 before they complete 2, and the mission is considered complete when both rectangles, or all rectangles, depending on how many are there, have markers on them. If the rectangle has a dashed line, as you see here, the worker must be placed on a different location to complete the objectives. In this case, the description states the worker must go to Rue Baradat. When playing the harder 3-star missions, you will find that they are more complex than regular missions. The extra rules text on the card may contain extra directions about the specific order or timing of actions. After each resistance worker has been activated, that worker must be able to trace a clear route from their present location back to a safe house. A safe route is one in which the player can trace a path through only empty spaces or spaces occupied by other resistance workers. For instance, getting from the doctor to the safe house is a safe route since they can go through here and they don't run into any patrols. However, if this patrol were here, now there's no way to get from the doctor to this safe house, as even going the long way around this way runs into a patrol here and there's no other route to get there. If there is a clear route, return the worker to the safe house along the route. If the safe house spare room is in play, then either that safe house or the original safe house may be used. However, if you cannot draw a clear route from the worker to a safe house, then the worker is arrested and removed from the game permanently. If the worker is arrested, the player may only receive the rewards from that action if the location has an orange shield with a star symbol, such as here or on certain mission cards here. Otherwise, the worker never makes it home and cannot bring the reward back. It should be noted on the 3-star missions, the orange shield icons are specific to a particular objective rather than being in effect for the whole card. So in this case, only objective 2. If you discard a weapon resource, you may remove 1 Milice patrol from the board. You may perform this action at most once per day. Soldiers cannot be removed from the board in this way. And each time you remove a Milice in this manner, increase the soldier track by 1 and decrease the morale by 1. The player may only shoot Milice that are actually on the board. If they're being placed during the placement phase, they may not shoot them then. Also, shooting Milice may be used in between completing an action and tracing a safe route to a safe house. Also, a worker collecting a weapon resource may use that same weapon immediately to shoot Milice. You may place a fake ID resource on the board at the same time as you place a worker during the placement phase, and it must go in the same space as that worker. If the worker is blocked on the way back to the safe house, as this worker currently is, they may use the fake ID to bypass a single patrol. And this may be either Milice or soldier. If they do, then the fake ID is spent. On the other hand, if the fake ID was brought out just as a precaution and it turns out that the worker is not blocked, the fake ID is not spent and the player may keep it for use later. If bypassing a single soldier is not enough to make it to the safe house, then the worker will be arrested and the fake ID is also lost. During the upkeep phase, all patrols are removed from the board and the day track is moved up 1 space. Anytime the day track moves onto any of these orange spaces, morale decreases by 1. The game ends as soon as you succeed at both your missions, or if the day tracker moves to the end, or if something else causes you to lose. If you obtain a major success on a 3-star mission as described on the mission card, and you complete your second mission, then you immediately score a major win. You've struck a meaningful blow against the occupation. If you succeed at 2 regular missions, you immediately score a win. It's also considered a win if you obtain a major success on a 3-star mission but fail to complete your 2nd regular mission before the day track marker makes it to the end. It's considered a draw if you have completed 1 regular mission but not the other at the point that the day track marker moves to the end space. You fought the fascists valiantly and done some damage, but nothing critical. You lose the game if at any point your last worker is arrested, or the town's morale reaches fail, or if the day track marker reaches the end space and you have not completed either of your missions. And that's how you play Maquis. It should be noted, as I said on page 3, that selecting mission cards and how you can sort of tweak the difficulty in doing that is outlined on page 3, but also on page 11 and 12. You can find different difficulty modes to also tweak that difficulty. So there you go, that's Maquis. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. And until next time, if you're bored online, bored offline.